At 12,000 feet, the engine begins to bleed. Oil escapes from the number 3 engine in a steady stream, pulled backward across the wing by the force of the slipstream. It leaves a dark stain across the aluminum skin, spreading toward the tail. Inside the engine, pressure is collapsing. Bearings that depend on constant lubrication are already heating beyond safe limits. In minutes, the damage will become irreversible. Metal will seize. The propeller will lock. And when it does, the bomber will lose its ability to stay with the formation. The pilot knows what happens next. He calls for bailout preparation. But the flight engineer is already moving. He does not carry tools designed for this situation. There are none. Instead, he carries a small tin container, a fragment of hacksaw blade, and a strip of leather he cut from his own boot days earlier for a test no one allowed him to perform. What he is about to attempt exists nowhere in official procedure. And yet, in the next 11 minutes, it will save the aircraft. The year is 1943. The 8th Air Force is paying for every mile over Europe. Bombers depart England in long, disciplined formations, their engines synchronized, their crews trained and ready. They cross the channel and enter hostile airspace, knowing that not all of them will return. Some are destroyed by flak, some by fighters. Others fail on their own. They come back wounded, their aluminum skins torn open, engines damaged, systems barely functioning. Some crash before reaching safety. Others land hard, barely able to remain intact. At Bassingbourn Airfield, the cost is visible. The air smells permanently of burned oil and hydraulic fluid. Mechanics move between aircraft in heavy clothing, their hands blackened from constant work. Mud covers everything, frozen at dawn, soft by afternoon. Bombers stand silent while repairs are made. Some will fly again, others never will. Every empty hardstand is counted, every absence noticed. The ground crews are not engineers by training. They are farm workers, machinists, mechanics, men who learn to repair machines out of necessity. They do not design solutions. They adapt them. When replacement parts fail to arrive, they salvage from damaged aircraft. When procedures fall short, they improvise. They work because the aircraft must fly, and because the crews depend on them. Technical Sergeant Howard Emory is different from most. He is 24 years old and serves as flight engineer aboard a B-17 named Made in America. Before the war, he worked in a machine shop in Akron, Ohio. There, he repaired heavy industrial equipment. He learned to observe stress, vibration, and failure. He learned that machines rarely fail without warning, if someone knows how to listen. Emory listens. He listens to engines the way others listen to voices. He notices changes in tone, small irregularities in vibration, subtle warnings others dismiss. He carries a notebook filled with sketches and observations, things he has seen, patterns he has recognized. Nothing official, only what he understands. During flight, his position is directly behind the pilots. He monitors the aircraft's systems continuously. Oil pressure, fuel flow, temperature, electrical load, hydraulic systems. He adjusts fuel mixture. He transfers fuel between tanks to maintain balance. He decides when an engine can continue and when it must be shut down. His decisions determine survival. The pilots trust him because they know he understands the aircraft better than anyone else aboard. Between missions, Emory works with the ground crews. He studies damaged engines, examines broken components. He wants to understand failure before it happens again. One problem appears repeatedly: oil line fittings. They fail without warning. The connection between oil line and engine block loosens under vibration. The seal breaks. Oil escapes rapidly. Once oil pressure falls below safe levels, the engine destroys itself within minutes. Standard procedure is simple. Shut the engine down. Feather the propeller. Continue on remaining engines. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes it is not. If another engine fails, the aircraft becomes uncontrollable. It falls behind. And isolated aircraft do not survive long. Emory has seen it happen. He has watched aircraft lose oil pressure and fall behind formation. He has watched fighters close in on bombers unable to defend themselves. He has watched aircraft disappear. Back at the airfield, he walks past empty spaces where bombers once stood. The crews are gone. Their aircraft replaced. Their absence permanent. He studies damaged oil fittings removed from destroyed engines. The failure is consistent. Vibration loosens the threads. Once loosened, pressure forces oil past the seal. The failure cannot be stopped. Not with existing procedure. Replacement parts have been ordered, but they have not arrived. And until they do, aircraft continue flying with vulnerable systems. Emory begins experimenting quietly. In the machine shop, he studies a damaged fitting. He measures its dimensions, calculates the pressure forces acting on it. The problem is not strength. It is motion. The fitting loosens because nothing absorbs vibration. He considers materials that might work. Rubber fails under heat. Cork compresses too easily. Metal cannot conform. Then he considers leather. Leather is flexible, durable, resistant to heat and oil. He cuts a thin washer from worn leather. He soaks it in oil. He carries it with him. He does not yet know if it will work, but he suspects it might. And soon, he will have no choice but to try. The oil pressure begins falling slowly. At first, it is almost unnoticeable. The needle moves only slightly below its normal range, a small deviation easily dismissed as instrument variation. But Howard Emory knows better. He has watched this pattern before. He knows what follows. He watches the gauge carefully. 60 pounds. 55. 50. The number 3 engine is failing. The bomber continues forward in formation, its engines maintaining steady rhythm. Outside, the sky is layered with cloud, the English Channel far behind them. Ahead lies enemy territory. The pilot glances at the instrument panel. "Engineer, confirm number 3, he says. Emory answers calmly. "Oil pressure dropping. Leak likely at the fitting." The pilot nods once. He does not need further explanation. Both men understand the situation. If the pressure continues to fall, the engine must be shut down. And once shut down, the aircraft becomes slower, weaker, more vulnerable. They continue forward. Minutes pass. The pressure continues falling. 45, 40, 35. The engine temperature rises as internal friction increases. Metal components expand beyond safe tolerance. Without lubrication, the engine will destroy itself quickly. The pilot asks the only question that matters. How long? Emory calculates silently. He considers pressure loss rate. Distance remaining. Engine temperature rise. 10 minutes, he says. Maybe less. The bombardier calls forward. He needs time to complete the bomb run. The formation cannot slow. They cannot break position. The pilot makes the decision. They continue. Bombs release cleanly. The aircraft turns for home. Oil pressure drops again. 30 pounds. 25. The engine begins vibrating more violently now. The sound changes, subtle, but unmistakable. The engine is approaching seizure. The pilot reaches toward the feathering controls. Emory stops him. "Give me 5 minutes, he says. The pilot hesitates. There is no procedure for what Emory is proposing. There is no guarantee of success. But there is also no better option. The pilot removes his hand from the controls. 5 minutes, he says. Emory moves immediately. He leaves his station and enters the narrow access passage leading toward the engine compartment. The aircraft vibrates continuously, every surface alive with motion. Cold air leaks through the structure, carrying the smell of oil. He opens the access panel. The slipstream roars past the opening, louder than anything inside the aircraft. Wind pulls at his clothing, threatening to tear him backward. He can see the oil line. Oil sprays outward in a fine mist, coating the inside of the nacelle. The fitting vibrates visibly, loosening itself with each second. This is the point where engines die. He reaches into his pocket. The leather washer is still there. He had cut it days earlier, unsure if he would ever use it. Now he has no choice. He wraps safety wire around the fitting to stabilize it temporarily. His hands slip on the oil-slick surface. He tightens the wire carefully, reducing the movement just enough. Then he loosens the fitting slightly, just enough to create space. He slides the leather washer into place. He tightens the fitting again. The leather compresses under pressure. It fills the gap. It absorbs the vibration. He watches carefully. The fitting stops moving. The leak slows. He closes the panel and returns to his station. The oil pressure gauge continues falling. 20 pounds. 15. He waits. Then the needle stops. It holds steady. For several seconds, nothing changes. Then slowly, the needle begins to rise. 17. 20. 25. The engine temperature stabilizes. The vibration decreases. The engine lives. The pilot watches the gauges, disbelief evident even without words. "What did you do?" he asks quietly. Emory answers simply, "I stopped the leak." The aircraft continues toward England, and the engine continues running. The engine survives the flight. That alone is enough to draw attention. When Made in America rolls to a stop on the hardstand at Bassingbourn, the ground crew is already waiting. They have seen the oil streaks across the wing. They have seen the engine struggling during taxi. They expect to find catastrophic failure waiting beneath the cowling. Instead, they find the engine intact, still functional, still alive. Howard Emory climbs down from the aircraft without speaking. His flight suit is stiff with oil. His hands are stained black. The crew chief approaches immediately. "What happened?" he asks. Emory gestures toward the engine. "Check the number 3 fitting." The cowling is removed carefully. Inside, the leather washer remains exactly where Emory placed it. It is dark now, swollen with oil, compressed tightly between the fitting and the housing. It has not torn. It has not burned. It has held. The crew chief stares at it in silence. He reaches forward and touches it gently, as if confirming it is real. He removes it slowly and turns it over in his hand. No one says anything. There is nothing in the manuals that explains what they are seeing. Finally, the crew chief places the washer into his toolbox and closes the lid. The story spreads quietly. Mechanics talk among themselves. Flight engineers listen. Other crews begin carrying leather with them on missions. They cut washers from gloves, from boot linings, from scraps found in maintenance shops. They do not ask permission. They do not report it officially. They simply use it when engines begin to fail. And the results are undeniable. Bombers that would have lost engines return safely. Aircraft that would have fallen behind remain with formation. Crews that would have died survive. Maintenance command eventually hears about it. Howard Emory is called in to explain himself. He describes what he observed. He explains the vibration, the failure mechanism, the role of the leather washer. The officer listening to him does not argue, but neither does he praise him. What Emory did violated procedure. Unauthorized modifications could have destroyed the aircraft, could have killed the crew, but it didn't, and that fact cannot be ignored. 2 weeks later, a technical order is issued. It authorizes the use of secondary reinforcement materials for oil line fittings in emergency conditions. Leather is listed among acceptable materials. Emory's name does not appear anywhere in the document. It does not need to. The mechanics already know. The change spreads quickly. Ground crews prepare leather washers in advance. Flight engineers carry them aboard aircraft. Oil line failures decrease. Engines survive longer. Bombers remain in formation. Losses decline. No one records exactly how many aircraft are saved. No one counts how many crews return home because of it. But the empty hardstands become less frequent. And that is enough. Howard Emory continues flying missions. He completes 18 more combat sorties aboard Made in America. Each mission carries the same risk. Each mission depends on engines surviving long enough. In July 1943, over Germany, their bomber is hit repeatedly by anti-aircraft fire. The damage is severe. The pilot gives the order. Bailout. Emory leaves the aircraft with the rest of the crew. He survives. He spends the remainder of the war as a prisoner. He endures hunger, cold, time. He survives. He returns home in 1945. He resumes his work in a machine shop. He repairs engines, machines, equipment. He never speaks about the washer. He never speaks about the engine at 12,000 feet. He never speaks about the moment when he chose to act without permission. He simply lives. Years later, after his death, his family finds his notebook. Inside are sketches, measurements, calculations, observations written carefully in pencil. On the final page, a single sentence appears. If the engine runs, the crew lives. No explanation follows. No signature. No recognition. But for a brief time in 1943, when bombers were falling and solutions had not yet arrived, one man found one. Not in a laboratory, not in a factory, but inside a freezing aircraft, with oil on his hands and seconds remaining. He did not invent something new. He simply understood something others had missed. And because of that, engines ran, aircraft survived, and men came home.